Hello, everyone. This is Dr. Slay, and it is Monday in our fifth week of Reading 370. I'm here to talk to you a little bit about our Module 5. The other thing is that I want to focus on in particular this week has to do with, we're going to continue to talk about guided reading, but I want to introduce a little bit of information about the differences between balanced literacy, guided reading goes with that, and structured reading, which is the other word that goes with the science of reading. Primarily, I'm not trying to tell you which one to do, one or the other, but I do want you to be exposed to understanding both definitions, both ideas, the pros and cons, and to hear from a voice from other people who have written about these things. I can give you my perspective, but my perspective comes from experience as opposed to something that some of those things weren't around or at least discussed when I was a teacher, but I can tell you a little bit about where I come from and my thinking. So let's get started with our unit. You should be seeing the screen. Let me just make sure. I'm going to drop this down. I want to make sure you're seeing. Yeah, you should be seeing the screen that says week 5. I'm in a student view, so hopefully everything's going to work. This is my way of checking to make sure that I haven't made any mistakes. So here we are. You are going to mainly focus on reading workshop this week. Notice I don't have anything under the writing workshop. One of your assignments, those of you that are not online right now, is to listen to this Zoom. I want you to explore the differences between balanced literacy and structured reading, as I just mentioned. Read the chapters 4 through 6 of the guided reading book. I know some of you already read part of it, and some of you will pick and choose what you need according to what it is that you're going to be teaching. Know that this book is a tremendous resource that you can use when you're planning lessons for other classes, for internship, and as a resource when you're preparing to study for the core exam. View and respond to the guided reading presentations. The content in here for this week's module is all embedded. There's a couple of short articles from Reading Rockets that I think you'll like, and also a couple of videos that I think are going to do justice to the topic to give you some perspectives. As far as assignments are concerned, I will show you those at the bottom when we scroll down. And then the next Zoom course is 2 weeks from now. I need to take off this guided reading chapter 7 because that really should, well, let me take that back. I don't need to take it off. If you haven't read it already, or it's not one of the guided chapters that you had to do, then please read it by the end of next week. And then, of course, blog post number 2 will be due at the end of next week. And then we'll start dyslexia training next week as well. So here's the content. You'll see I have 3 sections for this week's module: content, guided reading, extras, and then your assignments and tasks. So here's the content for this week. You will see that there is a presentation I'm about to go through on guided reading and introduction, and then a little piece on chapter 2, which is just synopsis and pieces of the chapter. I'm not going to go through that. I'm going to let you go through that and see it because of time more than anything else. But here's the video that you will see. Let me just make sure. I just want to reveal it to you so you can see what you're going to be looking at. I want you to listen to this person. She goes by she calls herself the Reading Mama, and she's posted quite a lot. So she's a good source if you are looking for some inspiration, ideas, or clarification if you follow her. Here she is, the Reading Mama. What's the difference between balanced and structured literacy? These videos, I think hers is maybe 20 minutes tops. But one of the things that I want you to recognize, and when you listen to her video, is that she comes from the balanced literacy perspective because that's how she was trained. That's what she has learned to do. So she gives a really fair assessment of what does she know about balanced literacy and what does she understand about structured literacy, and how they can either complement each other, where the shortcomings of one are and the strengths of the other are, etc. So I thought that this one was really a fair one for you to get both sides of the coin, because you're going to see both in schools. Even though the STR, the test you're going to have to take, focuses very specifically on structured literacy, you will still see balanced literacy in schools. I want you to also watch this one. And let's see, I think it's going to be this second video. And this one was a pretty good video as well. Apparently, I've not seen her before, but she apparently has some other videos that might be interesting to look at. She really explains this conundrum that teachers are finding. You might have seen it when you were doing your observation hours for Reading 350. You might be in schools now, maybe as a para or working, maybe you see things going on in your kids' school. But the idea is that there is this tension in the field between structured versus balanced reading. And I think she's going to tell you how to look at it from a sense of getting your head wrapped around it so you don't get caught up in the drama of it. She really does a good job of explaining what each one is and the pros and cons and how to handle this. Because I am of the opinion that we do not throw the baby out with the bathwater. I'm going to show you another chart right now that I'm going to pull up and put in here. As I continued to look, I found, you can do lots of reading and to understand the differences. But here's a quick chart that says balanced literacy versus structured literacy. And I'm going to just go through a few bullets because I need to add what my experience and my research has shown me. One of the things is, it says balanced literacy is a haphazard approach to phonemic awareness instruction. I think we have to read carefully when we say that. Haphazard is a very broad statement. When I was a teacher, I started out as a bilingual teacher. So I was teaching, I had been trained in language acquisition, and I had to be very explicit about how I taught the sounds of our language. And I had to make a correlation between the sounds of Spanish and the sounds of English. And there are some things that line up and there are some things that sound very different, but I had to make that really clear to second graders as I was teaching them to read in both languages. I was not haphazard in my approach. I was very explicit. I had specific lessons. Some people might say haphazard is that, well, you just pick and choose whatever you need according to what. And I understand where that might come from because a lot of balanced literacy focuses on reading the learner, assessing what the learner says, and then doing and offering lessons that the learner needs, the student needs, as opposed to following the curriculum that doesn't miss a beat. So structured literacy here, it says, is explicit, systematic, and sequential in phonemic awareness. It's very sequential, and that's why it's so structured. That haphazard gives a connotation of like you pick and choose whatever you want to teach on whatever day. And I would tell you that a good teacher would argue with that and say, no, I'm not haphazard. I have a sequence, a scope and sequence, and I have explicit lessons to teach. Here it says phonics may be taught, but lessons are short and do not necessarily follow a scope and sequence. Well, I would argue with that and say that it depends on your school district. I worked for a school district where I was a curriculum writer, and our job was to create the scope and sequence. Sequence meaning something follows an order, one lesson after another, and one draws from the other. But I will argue that there are some districts where that doesn't exist. I will argue that scope and sequence is something that is decided by the district. So therefore, when the phonics people on the other side are going to say, yeah, well, you don't get to make those decisions. You have to use what science says. And I would agree with you have to follow the research. Back in the day, they didn't have the research that they do, so that we now have a very explicit set of phonics instruction through explicit, systematic, and sequential instruction. The balanced literacy people are accused of having rote memorization of high frequency words. I would agree that very often is, because I was always juggling, figuring out what words am I supposed to teach. Memorizing happened all too often, although I did explicitly teach spelling because I taught spelling patterns. And when you teach spelling patterns, you are not necessarily teaching them how to memorize. So you're giving them a strategy and a structure. Here, on the structured literacy side, high frequency words are taught according to their phonics patterns. Irregular words are taught explicitly. So here the key is, oops, excuse me, the phonics patterns is what's key. I taught phonics patterns, but not all teachers would. And if you're not trained in teaching like words their way that you were made familiar with in Reading 360, you don't know how to do that. So I will argue that people who do not find value in balanced literacy will find that because people haven't done it properly, they haven't taught it explicitly. Reading levels texts use the three queuing system. The three queuing system has become a bad word in today's world of explicit teaching. You might see it happening this in some schools still. They use something called the miscue analysis, which is MSV. M stands for meaning, S stands for syntax, or structure of the word. And V stands for the visuals of the word. What does it look like? How are the patterns put together? So if you look at the three queuing system, the way it was originally designed and its intended purpose, you are assessing reading through the perspective of what that reader is doing and what they need, and then being able to give them explicit instruction to help remediate them. A structured literacy person will use assessments and such as well. However, I don't think, and I could be wrong, but I don't believe that they focus, they're more worried about, we got to make sure we cover everything in this curriculum, regardless of whether or not that student needs it or not. They're worried about teaching the stuff. Balanced literacy students are more focused on teaching the students and what they have to offer. Here you will see that the structured reading people use decodable texts that are included in already learned phonics patterns. So notice the focus is on decodable, whereas in the balanced reading side, they use, I think I saw it down here, they used leveled reading using the three queuing system. That's where your Fountas Pinnell, if you see those in districts. Even Jen Richardson, she talks about both sides, and she approaches very explicit teaching, but she does come from a balanced literacy background. And I'm going to talk a little bit more about what she has to offer and how she addresses the structured literacy. There's a greater focus on meaning of the text rather than the accuracy of what is read. I would say balanced reading is very much focused on meaning because we read for meaning. And I have said that many, many times in all the courses I teach. Absolutely. We read for meaning. We don't read to be able to just call words. However, and I had to do a lot of thinking and digging and learning about the structured reading approach to find out where they were coming from. You would, if you really listened carefully to the experts, they are not going to tell you that reading is not about meaning. At the end of the day, we all read for meaning and for comprehension. But what they're going to tell you is that you can't comprehend what you can't read. So they're very focused on being able to decode words to lead to meaning. And so therefore, the balanced literacy people would allow a student to approach a word, so they allow them to use pictures to help them read a word. Well, that works sometimes and it doesn't work sometimes. So balanced literacy people, I would encourage them to really focus on the words that are on the page. So if you say, I'm trying to think of an example, that's a horse, but the word says horse, but the picture is of a donkey, and you're reading donkey because you see the picture. Well, that's not what the word says. It says horse. So you can use pictures to supplement and to support your reading, but it should not be the reading. And we know that lots of children read pictures sooner than they do read the actual words. So here on your balance, on your On the right-hand side where you have your structured literacy people, it says misread words are corrected and the focus is on sounding them out. Whereas your guided reading people probably would allow you, they would encourage you to sound it out, but they might just give you the word instead. Students get better at reading by reading. This one I really struggle with people who criticize that. We do get better by reading, but we don't get better at reading by reading if we don't have the explicit instruction to teach us how to read. So that term can be misconstrued. Notice it's in quotes. There is a lot of research to tell you how kids do improve. That's why independent reading exists, because kids need practice. They need practice to improve their reading. Students here, it says students here get better at reading by learning and practicing the code. Well, I wouldn't argue with that. You have to practice your sight words. You have to practice the phonics and the codes of the alphabetic system. So I think that we need to take the positive side of both of these to understand and put it into context. The point of reading instruction is to get children to love reading. Well, I don't think that the point of reading instruction is to get children to love reading. I think that statement has been taken out of context. The point of reading is to to get children to read and to love reading because they can read. We want to motivate them to read. The point of reading instruction is to teach kids how to read and read effectively to become learners and users of text, to create and write their own text. Here it says that the point of reading instruction is to teach children to read. Well, of course it is. So I think there's pros and cons on both sides of these. And I think that, like anything else that we think about in our instruction or what we read, we have to look at the context and where this perspective is coming from. And as this, whoops, excuse me, let me back this up just a minute. As this particular one of these charts said, oh, I know, it's in one of these blog posts. Let me show you where that is. Up here it says, let's see, these are links. Structured literacy, the basics, and seeing the good in balanced literacy and moving on. That's the title. So let's find the good, because there's a lot of balanced literacy bashing going on. And everything needs to be improved. As that lady that we just saw on the picture of the video, I asked you to see the second one. She is going to tell you you need to continue to receive professional development. You should seek out continued learning. So don't just stop with, well, they told me to do it and this is the way it should be. Know your stuff and know why. And all these sites that I give you are so that you have resources. I don't expect you to get it all in the first pass. This is something that you'll want to know how to go back to and listen to your literacy coaches, know how to go back to in order to refresh your memory when you're preparing for tests, because you want to get certified, but preparing to be teachers, and you need to be able to talk to parents, and you want to make sound judgments with your peers when you're writing curriculum and lessons. So this is one side. I want you to read that blog. It comes from Reading Rockets, and you cannot go wrong with Reading Rockets. They present you with everything. So truly pay attention to what it is saying. I want you to look at that. I also want you to look at the other side of the coin, and I want you to look at the other blog posts also from Reading Rockets, which is structured literacy instruction, which is the basics. So they give you some specific pointers here that I think you'll find useful. And there's lots more to come, but I thought these might be a good introduction to understanding both sides of the coin this week. Okay, so what else is under content? I talked about the 2 links, the blogs, the 2 videos, and then let's look really quickly at this. So what is guided reading, and how do we move forward in guided reading? So I want you to know that guided reading is, you don't have to do this. This was if we were all together, excuse me. So if you look at pages 9 and 10, you'll get a good idea of some of the things that if you didn't highlight these, you might want to highlight. Notice it says you'll learn that students develop reading habits. That's part of a guided reading instruction. It's to develop a child's developmental word knowledge. So you are teaching them word structures, but it also has to be developmentally appropriate if you want it to stick. And you're also focusing on their ability to comprehend. One of the things that is so particular in this book that I love about Jan Richardson that you may not necessarily find in all other people who follow balanced literacy is that she has this model that I think is a nice crossover to the guided reading and the structured literacy, because she has this, it's very systematic for her. Her book is systematic, although it was not originally written with structured literacy folks in mind. So she has that assess, you have to know where your kids are, and then you have to decide what they need. And then you have to guide their reading with very explicit instruction that follows that zone of proximal development, because you need to teach kids where they are, which is why this is a grouping structure, but it's a flexible grouping structure depending on where the kid is and what they need. I have been in some in structured literacy classrooms in my observations, and I am going to say that I'm disappointed to see whole group instruction only, and I'm disappointed to see where everyone is being taught exactly the same thing, regardless of who they are, and the kids look bored to death. They're not really focusing. The teacher's doing a great job, but she's not meeting the needs of all of the students. Now, that's in a couple of classrooms that I've observed, so I'm not going to pass judgment on everything I've seen. It's just where I happen to have been observing for some of my pre-service teacher observations. So here's the various different sections of the book that you've already started to get exposed to. I think what's nice is that she focuses on very specific levels of reading and which coincide with the grade levels. So that allows you to be able to pick and choose what you need, use it as a resource. And then of course, the presentations you've all made will give us some greater insight if you need a refresher or an overview. Here is a nice video that we should probably look as we think about how she talks about what a guided reading is to her in these early years.
Welcome to this video series, Next Step Guided Reading in Action. This series is an outgrowth of my book, The Next Step in Guided Reading. I'm Jan Richardson, and I've created this video series based on the many requests I've gotten from teachers who want to see lessons in action. These model lessons are designed to show you just how powerful and effective guided reading can be in improving your instruction and helping your students become better readers. As a key part of a literacy program, guided reading will help your students build the foundational skills they'll need to meet and exceed standards. These video clips cover the full gamut of readers you're likely to find in a primary classroom. There are lessons for pre-A, emergent, early, transitional, and even fluent readers. You'll see how small group guided reading lessons meet the needs of all readers: English language learners, struggling readers, and those reading on and above grade level. The pre-A lesson set helps you better understand and support children with limited preschool experiences or those who are learning how to speak and read English. I'll show you how to help these budding readers reach goals at the pre-A level, including how to learn letters and sounds, how to increase phonemic awareness, how to become familiar with print concepts, and how to link letters and sounds to write a simple message with the teacher.
We like to run.
Get your mouth ready.
R.
Tremendous growth happens between pre-A and the next stage, emergent reading. You'll see how emergent readers have learned most of the letters and sounds and are ready to learn reading strategies such as checking the picture and using initial letters to figure out new words.
How did you know that was hill and not rock? You have an H.
Your lesson plans will include helping emergent readers learn some easy sight words and use known letter sounds during reading and writing.
L-I-K-E. Like.
A child at the early reading stage is developing more strategies for decoding. As the student gains automaticity with words, you'll see an increase in fluency. At this point, the books the children read have a storyline, so you'll want to teach them to retell and discuss the story. And you'll notice how I really push these comprehension elements in my lessons with them.
What did the puppy do when he didn't get the food?
He cried.
Cried. So maybe they felt sorry for the puppy because he was crying.
The word study with early readers targets phonetic skills such as digraphs, blends, the silent E feature, and vowel patterns. Transitional readers can be found in any grade, but they are most often reading at the second grade level. They have many sight words under their belt and are learning how to handle words with multiple syllables.
And Gregory, what helped you with this word? Was there a part the first part there?
Yes.
What was the first part?
D.
D.
The stories at this stage are becoming more complex, so students can compare and contrast characters, ideas, and themes. You'll want to use a variety of genres, so students learn different strategies for understanding and discussing narrative, informational texts, and even poetry. If you teach second grade, you may have some fluent readers in your class. Students who are good at self-monitoring, decoding, fluency, and retell, and who have the background knowledge to tackle advanced books. As I do with the students in the Fluent Model lesson, you'll want to challenge your strong readers with complex texts that require a variety of comprehension strategies.
What did you learn on this page about their smell?
A polar bear can smell a sail from a mile away, so it has strong smell.
We've designed the Next Step guided reading in action videos to help you fully understand and master the guided reading process. With each reading stage, you will find a reader profile and a step-by-step guide on how to plan a lesson. You'll also be able to watch an actual guided reading lesson and see short clips that demonstrate specific teaching points. One of the most valuable things you will learn in this video series is how to use your assessment data to plan and teach a guided reading lesson that targets individual needs. Before teaching each lesson in this series, I met with the classroom teachers. Together, we looked at the assessment data, identified a focus strategy, and selected an appropriate book.
And so we chose this Great Gracie Chase. It's a nice storyline. It's got a beginning, middle, and end, has some details.
As I'm teaching, you'll see me prompt and scaffold to help students develop independence with the focus strategy. After each lesson, I share my reflections and offer suggestions for the next guided reading experience. Don't forget to dig into the resources that accompany this set of video clips. In the View and Do guide, you'll find suggestions for using this video series as a professional learning tool. There are also helpful questions and teaching tips and alignments to Common Core standards. The CD contains the actual lesson plans and assessment forms I used for the model lessons. I suggest you follow along with them as you view each lesson. You'll find the same blank forms for your own assessing, planning, and teaching. Now, I invite you to watch and study these videos and take the next step in your guided reading instruction.
So one of the things that I'd like to mention there is she mentioned the Common Core. Texas standards, Common Core were actually written they used the Texas standards as a guide, and so there's a strong corollary between them. I have to say she does not call her work structured literacy, but I want you, when you are listening and paying attention to the work that you're doing this week, please do focus on the elements that have to do with explicit teaching. Notice she very much has a structure. Notice the way that she was working with students, and she was very clear about teaching them the structure of the language, the vowel pairs, the not diaphragms, but the digraphs and the various different word letter clusters that do make words. So be aware and be focused on that. One of those your discussion post this week has to do with looking for examples of explicit instruction. so that you can find a way to bring the best of both worlds to your teaching when you enter a school and you need to understand what they're talking about, and you can find ways to teach children, but to teach them the structure of our language very explicitly as you're developing readers who can be both word callers, they can be both decoders, maybe that's a better word, and a comprehender. I'm also teaching a reading 380 course, which is the higher grade levels. So that one focuses on grades 4 through high school. And one of the things that is a big issue when kids get to middle school is that if those of them who still can't read, what do you do when you reach kids that can't read? Well, the research will also show you that perhaps they had a weak background in their decoding, but maybe they can decode. I met lots of readers in middle school where I taught for many years who can read the words. That doesn't mean that they can understand them. So there has to be a balance between that sense of ability to decode and that ability to comprehend and make meaning of their text. So they need to have both. So when the kids get older, you have to figure out, well, where's the breakdown? What happened? So in your foundational years, for most of you that are becoming elementary school teachers, you do need to understand both sides of the world and how you can reach the kids that are in your classroom. Some kids are going to need a much stronger focus on a structured approach, and some people are going to need a more open approach that addresses them where they are. My children were good examples of that. My daughter was an avid reader. She learned how to read very early on, and it seemed to me that she had less explicit phonics. I think that if you asked her today, what are your phonics rules, she probably wouldn't be able to tell you. My son, however, I was really worried he wasn't going to learn how to read. And when I went to his teacher, and they said, well, we're going to teach him differently. And we've got some very structured lessons that are focused on phonics. And so he, by contrast, had a much more structured approach to teaching. Well, he's doing extremely well right now as in his life, and they're both very strong readers. But they had two different types of instruction that they were there to meet the needs, and their teachers were able to provide both. And remember that writing has a very strong world and place in reading instruction as well. So there's some other resources that are in the book that, as you probably found, hopefully you are following along in the book, and you can see where you can see some of the videos. So the next thing I want to show you, you're going to need this let me pull it up and pull it into the screen. Here you go. You can see it right now. When you go to the Scholastic website, who published this book, you will see there's Jan Richardson, and you will see a lot of these videos, some of the one you probably saw, but you're going to see one of the focus on one of your assignments for this week has to do with the emergent videos. This is where you're going to find it, emergent videos. Now you're going to need a password to get in here. The password, they tell you in the book. So if you're reading and you found it, you might have overlooked it, but go to chapter 7. On chapter 7, it asks you to find the last word of the first paragraph. And I'm telling you now, it's results in case you need it. You will not be able to have access to these videos if you are not paying attention to that password. So I encourage you to look at the emergent videos, because I'm going to ask you to make some comments of looking for what is structure, what is explicit instruction in her guided reading groups. And I think that I mentioned this earlier. I see a lot of structured literacy lessons that I said in schools, they're happening as whole group. Guided reading is very much focused on small group instruction. You cannot teach kids to read if you're not focusing on the individual learners themselves. And you have to have a plan on what builds on the next. So notice how she develops these small groups of learning experiences. And so you can just click on one video and then it leads into the next. Notice they're really short, 1.5, 3 minutes, 45 seconds, 2 minutes. So I think These are nice models of instruction. If nothing else, you may walk away with some ideas of things you can do in the classroom. So I encourage you to look at that. And then you can see them for the different stages as well. Let me think. Let's go back to, I'm going to close that out because we don't need that one anymore. So we're going to go, I think we've seen this. Let's go back to content. And so it's still thinking. Structured, so I showed you these two. We talked about the videos, and then there's a presentation on the structure of the chapter 2, which is the pre-A reader, which is, very the youngest of readers. This one really focuses on alphabet and how you're teaching kids the phonemic awareness in the sounds there. So I hope you will find these enjoyable and useful to you as you go through their content for this week. You will also see that I have guided reading extras. There, I need to check because there should be 2 others that are specific chapters in the book that I left there for you to see in case you want to go back. I'm in the student view, so I must have not checked that they're available, but I do want you to see this Jan Richardson website. I wanted to see, because I knew that her work was done under the balanced reading lens. I wanted to see what she has to say about structured reading. So notice she has a whole section on this website on guided reading and reading science. So, and it says to look at the research. I will tell you, people who say that balanced reading literacy is not focused on, there's no research to support it. I would argue that that's not true. There is a lot of research. There's a lot of research on different elements of balanced literacy and guided reading. It's not, there are many different approaches and many different what do they call? I think they're calling it an evidence-based instruction now. It's there. My whole bookcase is filled with this. So you can't say that it doesn't exist, but I think it depends on your ideology, your philosophy, and how you believe that students learn to read and what you have found that works. So I want you to be exposed to all of it. So check this out. She is going to give you this paper that I don't expect you to read it all, but if you are someone who's really interested, go read it and check out some of the research that you can see so you can understand more specific elements. Anything that Tim Shanahan writes is going to be good on reading instruction. But what you're going to find that she is talking about the science of reading and how elements of her work does tie in. She talks about things where she feels that her model has been a little bit weak. And so she's not thumbing her nose at it in the least. So I do want you to be aware of both sides. Let's go back into week 5. So here we have the content for the week. That these are things I definitely want you to look at by the end of the week. I also then, the reading extras are just that. Use them at your will in a way that gives you background information or supplementary resources. And here's our assignments. There are 3 things. One is the guided versus explicit reading instruction. This is a discussion. And what I'm asking you to do in this discussion, let's see, I don't think it's going to click. It should be, it says it's due on Friday. It's available. Oh, I need to fix this because it should be open now. So I thought I had fixed it, but I may have forgotten to click save. So I will make sure I fix this so that you can get into the guided reading, a guided versus explicit instruction. I want you to look at that series of videos that I pointed out to you and then talk about, there's a couple of questions to answer. And one of it is, what are examples of being an explicit reading teacher? And you're going to need to understand what that word means because you will see it on tests, explicit. There's another one here. There's another discussion. Oh, I'm sorry. That is the Thursday discussion. This is the one that I believe is the one that was open today. Yeah, I got my 2 topics mixed up. So in this one, I ask you to look at the pre-A or emergent early videos provided. And then there's a few questions in here. Let's see if we can make this come open. Start new thread, write down any observations or notice what you notice in these different levels and post them on this thread. And notice how has the process changed going through these steps. So that's really asking you to think about what are the needs of the different learners and how do they evolve. So that's your work for this week. And then there's one more thing. So my apologies, I'm going to change the order. One of them is your Thursday discussion. This is your Thursday discussion. This is all week long. You can get started anytime you want. And then this is the final one that I want you to do. And this is where I want you to go back and look at your peers' presentations that are on the Padlet. So you click on the Padlet. I need to link that. I linked it somewhere else, but I did not link it here. You go and I want you to also open this Google Doc. There, see, I posted it here. There's our Padlet coming up. And here we'll see all your wonderful blogs. I did not explicitly ask you to go read each other's blog, but feel free to do that and leave each other comments because writers like to hear from each other. They like to know people are reading their stuff. But I do want you to look at the different presentations and I want you to add some thoughts and comments to that this week. It tells you right here to leave at least one comment in the presentations that you watched. In this case, I want you to watch all of them. There's only one per chapter. And they shouldn't be that long that you should be able to do it. But I made this oh, this went twice. Let me get this second one out of there. I want you to submit this by Sunday. So I'm giving you a little more time because there's a little bit more viewing on this. And that's what I love about Google Docs. I can correct it in real time. Then what I want you to do while you're watching the videos is when you're giving your peers feedback on the Padlet. But here, I want you to think about what you observed, and I want you to do a small, quick reflection, 3 things that you, important facts that you got about the level, the type of reader, the 2 things from the strategy that you saw from the teaching model that the demonstration they were to provide, what something you can't live without, and then maybe something that concerns you about teaching at this reading level. So there's a place for each one of the levels. And then finally at the bottom, I have the QR code. If you are the type of person that wants to do it on your iPad, on your phone, while you're reading and watching, and then you have your computer over here so you can do all your typing, I'm cool with that. Do know you have to download this. You cannot type directly into this document. Otherwise, everybody would be typing on top of each other. So it's closed to you guys. I'm the originator, so it's not to me. But you can go file and download it as a Microsoft Word document to give yourself access. Then you pull up that document and then you can type directly into the computer and upload it. Or if you prefer, you can upload the Word document directly into the D2L assignment. The other thing that you'll notice, let me go backward. Back, please. Let's go back to assignments. If you will notice, I also linked it here so you can download it as a document. And there it is. It should pop up any minute. So it's the same thing. You've got it here as a Word document if you prefer to work that way, or maybe you want to print it and you want to do paper pencil. It's your choice. You have lots of ways to do this, but that's due on Sunday to give you a little more time to get through some of this week's content. So that's it for Module 5. Thank you for all your hard work, and I'm sorry that I missed the boat on the last week's discussion, but I don't feel too terribly badly, other than for those of you who were hanging and waiting to figure out what's Dr. Slade doing. I apologize to you, but I think that I was happy that you had the extra time to work on your blogs and the presentations. Enjoy each other's work and enjoy the learning journey and have a fabulous week. I am going to stop sharing and say bye for now. I will talk to you all soon. Let me know whatever I can do to help you through this process. Bye-bye.